So often when we talk about traditional retirement planning, we talk about having one portfolio and one withdrawal rate that we stick to for, well, ever. Maybe it's 4%, maybe it's 5%. We just pick a number and we live with it. And to be clear, I've absolutely talked about this strategy on this channel. I've also talked about the strategy where you start at a higher spending rate and then slowly taper your spending over time, because this is what we tend to see from real retirees. This is what the data shows. When you tend to go into your 70s and your 80s, your life tends to simplify a bit. You travel less, and so you spend less overall. And then at the same time, when we discuss an early retirement, we often introduce the idea of bucketing, maybe having a bridge strategy to fund your early retirement years until those more traditional retirement years where Social Security will kick in and you have a lesser need from your portfolio, and segmenting out these times. In other words, we've absolutely accepted the idea that retirement can be split into phases. But there's one question that still keeps nagging at me. What if we applied that same thinking to a more traditional retirement? Hey guys, what's up? I'm Erin and welcome back to the channel. What if we have a household who retires at the age of 62 and they also claim Social Security at the age of 62, but at the same time, they know that the first 10 years of their retirement are going to be very different in terms of spending and lifestyle compared to the life they're going to have when they're in their 70s and in their 80s. They're expecting more travel, more experiences, and just higher spending overall, and they don't want to constrain their spending in the early years of their retirement by forcing their entire portfolio into a rigid 4 or 5% withdrawal. Could we use a bucketing approach inside a traditional retirement? And more importantly, is there data to support this? The classic one portfolio, one safe withdrawal rate forever framework exists for simplicity and worst-case safety, not because it reflects how real retirees live. This type of framework assumes flat spending forever, no lifestyle adjustments, no front-loading your experiences, no income changes, no adaptation. But real retirees look different. They tend to spend more earlier. They tend to simplify later. They may add Social Security, perhaps a pension or Medicare, and become less dependent on their portfolio over time, not more. Forcing a 62-year-old to financially behave like an 82-year-old is mathematically conservative, but ultimately lifestyle constraining. This isn't just intuition. Michael Kitces has shown repeatedly that what happens in the first decade of retirement matters far more than what happens later. Early returns dominate long-term outcomes. This is where sequence of returns risk lives. David Blanchett's work takes this a step further by shifting the conversation away from one withdrawal rate and toward goal-based and liability-based income planning. In other words, you're matching the money to where it's actually needed. And the takeaway from the research isn't that buckets magically outperform everything else. It's that when you step back and you think in phases, it lines up much better with how risk actually shows up and where it dominates in retirement, and how people truly spend money throughout their retirement. So let's talk about how this could actually look. Think about retirement in two phases. Phase 1 is the lifestyle phase, roughly ages 62 to 72. This bucket is freedom and travel and experiences. It's the ability to say yes when your health and your energy are there, and it is funded with a dedicated slice of the portfolio. And within this slice of the portfolio, we can use a more aggressive withdrawal rate, something in the ballpark of, say, 6 to 10%. The goal here, the design here, is that this portion of the portfolio is meant to be depleted. This bucket doesn't need to last forever. Then phase 2 starts in their 70s. This is the core income phase. We have stability, dignity, simplicity. Social Security is on the line and we have lower spending, so the portfolio is now supporting a smaller gap. And this bucket really benefits from having 10 years where it didn't have to fund anything. It was just allowed to quietly compound in the background. And truly, once you get 10 years into retirement, your risk from sequence of returns risk is much lower. Counterintuitively, this approach can reduce risk. It can reduce portfolio stress. It can reduce early spending regret. It can reduce the fear of spending. And it can reduce the risk of later life portfolio failure. Why? Because you're no longer asking your entire portfolio to support peak spending forever. You're isolating the risk to the years where it actually exists most. And this is really the heart of this idea. Fixed withdrawal rules maximize portfolio survival. Time-segmented spending maximizes life satisfaction without increasing failure risk. Or if I were to put this more simply, rigid spending protects the money. Structured flexibility protects the person. Now, this is not a spend wildly and hope for the best approach. This approach only works if the buckets are explicitly sized. The early bucket is allowed to run down, and the later bucket is protected. Guaranteed income streams still function as the backbone in this plan, and there has to be a psychological acceptance that spending will taper in life. This is a designed decline. Let's walk through an example to truly bring this to life. The first step is we're going